Alright, so we're going underneath the car today. We'll take a look around. We've got shock absorber mount, bushings popped out, 2 different washers. The 2 washers might be okay. I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be like that. I wouldn't think so. But the bushings definitely screwed up. And here's the stabilizer bar link, obviously deteriorated quite a bit. I have put penetrating oil on nuts and bolts that I'll be getting to. Going to change the front end bushings. Here's the stabilizer link mount right here. That's what it's supposed to look like. If you go over to the other side, got some damage. Bolts damaged. The bracket seems to be bent. I've already taken the bolt out of the back. Up here we've got a nut not completely fastened, missing a rivet, and this rivet's not doing anything, and there's a little bit of weld right here, and I got some washers acting as spacers right there to space the bumper up to where it belongs. And so there's been a little bit of damage on this side, a little kink right here possibly in the frame. Goes along with this. I guess that's consistent with possibly running over something. Hopefully not from a front impact, although this isn't looking too good here. And here's the other stabilizer link. And I've already taken the shock absorber out to make sure everything's going to come apart. And I took my 30-pound breaker bar and I broke everything loose to disassemble the upper and lower control arms and remove the kingpin and all that good stuff. I'm going to do all the bushings. So the brakes are still apart, and I never completely fastened my wheel cylinder because I knew I was going to be taking the front end apart. Here's my new flexible brake line. I'm going to disconnect that. To take this backing plate off, you can just swing it out of the way and put a piece of wire around it and hold it up to support it and let this hang if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this brake line and take the backing plate completely out, and that'll help me to refinish the backing plate as well and make it look nice. So right here you can see the brake line's disconnected, the flex line, and that is the pivot pin on the upper control arm. The rubber bushings are brittle and seem to be pulling away. Right now I don't have any support under the lower control arm, so the coil spring's pushing down on everything. But I'm replacing these front end parts mostly just for general principle. The front end seemed kind of tight. The only real play was in the wheel bearings, especially on the passenger side, and also the idler arm and the drag link have a little bit of play in them. But I might find out that these parts weren't really worn out, but I don't care. I'm just going to replace them anyway, because they could be up to 65 years old, and I just want new components. A couple of quick observations though. Here you can see on the tie rod end, the rubber grease boot is destroyed, and also on the backing plate, these pads are where the brake shoes come into contact. They're supposed to be smooth, and they are for the most part, except for the lower ones right here have a pretty good groove worn in them, and this one especially in the front has a pretty good groove worn in it. This one also, the front ones are grooved. Well, I guess they're all grooved a little. This one's nice and flat, but anyway, those are just a couple of observations. I'm not sure how to fix that other than possibly running a bead of weld in there and then grinding them smooth again. but I'll have to think about that. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start taking the front spindle apart. Wrong cotter pin in right here. Really small cotter pin, not the right one. I broke everything loose with a 30-inch breaker bar. I think I mentioned that already. Rather than putting heat on anything. Don't really want to put heat on anything on the front end. This is called an oil guard. And boy, it's really on there. All right. Now at this point, I could take my ball joint fork and take this castle nut off and separate this joint and drop it away from the steering knuckle. But for right now, I'm just gonna pull that knuckle, the steering link off of the knuckle support like that, and then there's two spacers up here. I'm gonna go ahead and take those off, and they appear to be the same size. There's not a front and a back. The next thing I could do, and I already started to drive this pin out. It's a pin that holds the king pin in. I could go ahead and take it out now, or wait till I got it on the bench. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drive this pin out. It drives out from the back towards the front. All right, and it's got a flat spot on it that goes towards the kingpin when you put it back in, and obviously it has to go in from the front towards the back. Okay, so next there's dust cap on top of the kingpin and a dust cap on the bottom of the kingpin. And I think, alright, let's see. Sometimes I think they might be staked in, but they're also compression fit. They're sort of convexed, and when you put them in the top, you drive them in with a punch and they spread out and they stay there. And this one seems to be in at an angle. So let me take a look at this. Yeah, there appears to be two stake marks on this one right here. So let me get something to get these out with. Alright, so I just used a heavy duty pick and punched a hole in the top of it and pulled it out. And now I'll attempt to do the bottom one as well. Alright, so there's the bottom one. Now, should be able to drive the kingpin out. Alright, I don't feel it moving, so let me take a look at what my options are here. Alright, I haven't been able to get this kingpin to move. I have tried driving it down. Doesn't seem to move. So it's not that important that I take the kingpin out right now. I can take the knuckle support out and put it on a bench, or bring it to the machine shop and let them press it out. It seems to be seized in the steering knuckle support. It's just not moving. I thought there might have been a snap ring on the top or the bottom, and there's not. I do notice that there's a shim right here. And the head of this bolt hits this pad right here, and that's the steering stop, one on the front and the back. So anyway, for now I'm gonna have to leave it in and let the machine shop handle it, more than likely. I'm gonna spray a little cleaner up there, put a little penetrating oil, transmission fluid and acetone, let that sit on top of it, and maybe it'll soak down in there, and I'll try to knock it out again later. But I think it's going to be something that the machine shop's going to have to do. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead now and disconnect the stabilizer link so I can get ready to disconnect the knuckle support and lower the lower control arm and take the coil spring out. So I did go ahead and loosen the fittings for the lower pin. Got a 1 1/4 here and a 1 1/8 on the back. Got those loose with the breaker bar, and then up top I got 1 inch on the back and 1 inch on the front too. So they're loose. It's easier to loosen them with the breaker bar while they're on the car. And now I'll go ahead and take the stabilizer bar loose. Alright, so I'm over on the passenger side now, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this side of the stabilizer bar so I can get it out of the way.